Hello everyone, Karen here with a Prophecy Watchers update. As many of you all may know by now, we have a Colorado Springs Prophecy Conference at the end of the month, June 27th through the 30th, and we would love to have you join us virtually. We are sold out officially for in-person tickets, but from the comfort of your own home, you can join us and have access to all of the video presentations for an entire year, which is an amazing deal. There's so much information packed into this weekend. You can't possibly watch all of the presentations if you're there in person. So having this is almost like an added benefit because you can watch multiple presentations that are maybe going on at the same time, back to back. So if you would like to sign up, you can go to prophecywatchers.com, scroll down to the on-demand banner, and get signed up that way. And we also have the Roku app available for download now. So for those of you who have a smart TV and wanted to watch it on your TV instead of your computer or your smartphone, you now can download that app and have that availability for this conference. So we're very excited to have that as an option for you this year. And I have the wonderful opportunity of speaking with one of the conference favorites for sure, Ken Johnson, today. Ken, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the program.
Yeah, so I was looking over the title messages that you're going to be speaking on, and both of them are on the Dead Sea Scrolls. The first one you're speaking on Saturday, the Messiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is really intriguing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's really neat because several scrolls talk about the Messiah, and the theology that the Essenes had is identical with Christian theology. The Messiah is God incarnate. He comes to pay the penalty for our sin nature. They even give the date on when that happens, the fact that he starts the age of grace, the fact that he's called the Son of God. There's a whole lot of prophecies. Now, if you know the New Testament, it's nothing new to you. But the fact that the Jews in 200 to 300 BC believed that before the Pharisees came on the scene, the cults that took over the government and changed everything, it's amazing.
So the Messiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls, how does the Messiah show up in the Dead Sea Scrolls? And do the Essenes recognize him as the Messiah, or as Christians, are we just able to look at it and see that it is Messiah?
Yeah, they have lots of commentaries on the Old Testament, major and minor prophets. They believed in the Messiah. They knew he would be called Yeshua. They knew he would come at a certain date. They knew certain things about him, even points like the veil of the temple being ripped in half are actually mentioned. Wow. So they knew him very well. And there's actually one scroll that talks about the time when the Messiah came to Qumran and preached, and this little incident happened. So there's actually quite a bit of information about it. They knew of the Messiah, they accepted him, and of course everybody says, what happened to the Essenes? They converted and went and preached the gospel.
Wow. And the second presentation that you're going to be speaking on is the Antichrist in the Dead Sea Scrolls. How does he show up?
Mainly in the commentary in the book of Daniel, but then there's also commentaries from Micah and several other places. There's actually two scrolls. One is called the Antichrist scroll because it's very specific about him. But they talk about the fact that towards the end of time, that last 7-year period, there would be a evil ruler who would rule over Israel through a group of nations. And they talk a little bit about him, what he does. They don't set dates necessarily other than what Daniel says, but it's very fascinating to see that. They also talk about the things leading up to the time of the Antichrist, which we call the birth pangs. They call the time of the birth of the Messiah. And there's a lot of things about changing of the foods and the air, the medicines, Nephilim type discussions that come back. There's actually one specific prophecy about Nephilim technology reoccurring in the last days. So there's a whole lot of information in there, and we're beginning to see those things come about. Not quite yet, but they're getting here.
Do they go into more detail about the Antichrist, like more specific information than like in the biblical text? Kind of what to look for, who the bloodline or characteristics or anything specific that we wouldn't find just in the Old or New Testament?
Yeah, the vast majority of it would be their commentary on what the Old Testament says, which would agree with exactly what the early church said and what you and I would believe. But there are a few little extra things talking about how the Antichrist is the leader over a revived Roman Empire. They actually specifically say that. Not that it's revived, but the fact that he's leading Rome, and it's a large group of Gentiles. And there's several little points about where he comes from and/or bloodline. Uh, just a few little things. But the nice thing about it is the fact that if we can talk to our Jewish friends, the fact that their great-great-grandfathers knew for sure that the Messiah would come back then, there would be a kingdom about 2,000 years later, there would be an Antichrist, and certain things to look for, Egypt and Syria and those things. So it's really neat to see a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. So I know there's some controversy about even studying the Dead Sea Scrolls since it isn't all technically like biblical. So tell me what your response would be as a Christian. You're obviously devoting a lot of time and poring over these texts. What would your response be to why it's important or why you think you need to devote this time to presenting this information to the general public?
Just the fact that they were eyewitnesses. It's the same thing within the first century. Anybody that was an eyewitness to Jesus, their writings, of course, are in the New Testament. Anybody who was an eyewitness to the disciples of the apostles, that's the very earliest part of church history. And they would say, well, Peter told me this. Well, that stuff could be altered because it's outside the canon. But if the vast majority of people all say the same thing, that's something we can bank on. And the theology is the same. The fact that these guys were Jews way before Christians came, that talk about the date of the Messiah, what he would do, the fact he dies for our sins, that reconciles us to God. Those are things that if you're a Christian and you believe the New Testament, you know those to be true. And so the fact that these guys are saying the same thing is amazing. And then you go beyond the commentaries, which are just commentaries on the Bible, but their theories, what they say that the Holy Spirit showed them, and then history records them to be 100% accurate prophets, Josephus, Eusebius, all those guys. So if we're interpreting right, remember they are fragmented, so I could be off on my ideas, but if we're interpreting them right, I would much rather listen to them than somebody on the radio with his idea of what it means.
So just my own kind of personal interest, what's maybe one of the most interesting things that you've pulled out of studying the Dead Sea Scrolls, either about the Antichrist or the Messiah, or just a whole different topic from the scrolls?
I think it's pretty interesting, the early post-flood or pre-flood history on the Nephilim, and then the prophecies of the Nephilim medicine coming back, and things like that, things that I didn't really pay any attention to. I'm fairly healthy, so I don't think about that. But then in the prophetic aspect, to be told when we get toward the time of the Antichrist in that period, you're going to have problems like this way. This is how we recommend you deal with them. And that is just an invaluable source of information. Now, if that doesn't happen, we don't have to worry about it, then that's fine. But if it does, they had success in dealing with it their way. So I'd like to follow directions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do seem to be, I know it may not be as bad as they're saying that it will get, but in general, if you just kind of look at our planet, the way that they're polluting the waters and they're polluting the plants and the food that the animals are getting from the meat that we're consuming, all of the things that we are trying to do, even if we're trying to help ourselves eat the healthy foods, those are being contaminated on purpose to poison us, to cause disease. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that it might get to a point where we do need those medicines in order to supplement or help our bodies get back to a state of health. So I love that they took the time to kind of say, oh, this might be something you might need. Let us include this. That's very thoughtful of them. I appreciate that for sure.
I think it's actually also part of witnessing. When you can say, I told you yesterday this would happen and you just saw it take place, prophecy is amazing. And then now if we're healthier than the average person and they say, how do you do it? I'm following the same Bible, the one that told you what's going to happen. They told us what's going to happen, what to do about it. We did it. That's why we're healthier. And all of that is an amazing witnessing. ability.
Absolutely. For the non-believer, that's definitely going to make them stop and look twice, at least question it, maybe look into it. And then through that would be a very unconventional way to come to faith. But the Lord can absolutely use that. And I'm sure he will. Mm-hmm. In the last few minutes that we have, is there anything that you would like to specifically mention and tell our audience?
I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at the Prophecy Watchers Conference. If you're interested in following me, I teach on YouTube on Monday nights. My website is BibleFacts.org, so you can find out a lot about me there. And let's just keep studying the scrolls.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your time, Ken, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I do hope that you will take advantage of joining us for this conference however you can, and if not, we'll see you here, there, or in the air.